What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Deeper Level tonight. I am your host, Deeper Depths, and let me tell you, we are in for an amazing podcast. Now, this is kind of like a pop-up podcast. I wanted to make sure that we had ample time with our guest to accommodate him. So normally, this is probably not the time that you would see me go live, but let me tell y'all, I was not about to miss this. I actually learned something earlier today chatting with him briefly that this is actually one of the first podcasts that he's done. He normally doesn't do this, but he made himself available right here on the Deeper Level podcast. So that is huge because we are celebrating a first right here for my special guest. Now, before I bring him on, let's do a little house rules right quick. Y'all already know how we do here on the Deeper Level. Make sure that you like and subscribe to this channel. Also hit that notification bell so you're notified every time that I go live and more content becomes available. It looks like the chat is already popping. I want to say hello to some special people. Shout out to my guy Bats, who is a member here on the Deeper Level community. Appreciate you, my brother. Dark Age Supreme is in the building. Phantom Pain 778. Also, Bats. Yes, Rage is in the house. What is going on? The love of my life just pulled up my wife, Ebony. Hey, how are you doing? So that's it, chat. Keep this thing going. Get lit. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this right now. Share it on Twitter. Share it on YouTube, because I'm telling you, this is going to be a fire podcast. Well, listen, we had an opportunity to also have State of Suicide Squad podcast number 5, I believe, on this past Sunday, and my special guest was Sway and Miller, and let me tell you, it was an incredible time. So if you did not get a chance to check that out, check out the video on demand. It's live on my page right now over there on YouTube. So again, appreciate all the love and support that we've been getting here on the channel, the different people that have been subscribing to the channel, again, the different people that's been sharing it. Nava Flow is in the building. I see y'all steady coming in, man. That's it. Make sure y'all like and subscribe. Listen, without further ado, because this is about to be a fire interview, chat. Without further ado, I want to introduce my special guest because I want to make sure that I respect his time tonight and we get directly into what I want to chat about and talk about. This is going to be good. My guest is a senior artist developer and currently serves as one of the judges for BAFTA committee. Having worked for Respawn and Rocksteady Games, he has developed industry-leading AAA title games such as Apex Legends, Jedi Survivor, Batman Arkham Knight, Halo Wars, just to name a few, and the most recent title, Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League, set for release on February the 2nd. Please help me welcome my very special guest, none other than Mr. Dale Walker is in the building. What's up, my brother?
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. I hear you perfectly fine.
Yeah, nice. Oh, yeah, thanks for having me. This is gonna be
Man,
fun. I'm liking the energy already.
man. Hey, thank you so much, bro. I'm telling you, I was super, super honored just that you would take the time out. I had an opportunity to attend my first ever Game Awards in LA on last year. And it was just an honor to bump into you, man, and just so down to earth, just a really, really cool guy, man. Again, I followed you for quite some time. So it was a pleasure just to meet you in person.
Yeah, no, of course. It was like I was quite honored myself that someone would come up and even know who I was. So I appreciate that you put yourself out there.
Oh man, hey, no problem, brother. No problem, man. I'm telling you, I've just been able to, experience your work, and play your work for years, and just, having this opportunity to chat, face to face, and also knowing that this is not something that, you just do for everybody. I'm telling you, man, I really just don't know what to say to that. It's a pleasure just to have you tonight, man. But I want to get into something
Mhm.
and just kind of pick your brain on it. Of course, we're going to talk about Suicide Squad. We're going to talk career and all of that good stuff, man. But I hopped online about 2 weeks ago. And again, like I said, I follow you for quite some time. And, I just really appreciate how outspoken you are. I really do appreciate that.
I
I'm
think
telling
you
you, man.
appreciate it, but I don't know how much everybody else appreciates it.
Yes, sir. But I logged on 2 weeks ago, man. And lo and behold, Dale Walker, you were trending, man, with Nicki Minaj. I saw her
Yeah, I don't
actually retweet one of your posts. Tell me a little bit about that, man, because I know the Barbies, were a little, their feathers were ruffled behind this, man. But what actually happened there? What's the whole Nicki Minaj thing?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Um, yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. Like, I'm not gonna try and play it up to be anything other than exactly what it is. But long story short, um, I had noticed that Nicki Minaj, through someone else's tweet. I don't follow her, but someone else had, reposted that she had been using AI art for, like, I guess her marketing rollout. Like,
Sure.
oh, that is not to say that she made the AI art herself or the AI generated images herself to promote her single or whatever, but she was using, I guess, fan AI generated imagery to promote her her single. So I just quote retweeted it saying, long story short, that it was it makes your brand look really weak. Like, it makes your brand look broke
Right.
if you're leaning that heavy into something that's free when you have access to artists. You are an artist yourself, and you're making a decision not to use something you've put money towards to help push your brand. I didn't say it in those words, but that was basically the message. And I wasn't saying that directly just to her. I was using
Right.
it as an example and saying, anyone who does this, it makes your brand look really weak. Yeah, and then I guess it just started hitting numbers. Oh man, those numbers. I don't know. Once the algorithm catches you in Twitter, it's like, yeah, it can go very well for you or very bad for you very quickly. Either way, but yeah, she quote retweeted it saying like something really snide, like, yeah, good, or whatever. And then I replied saying like, hey, be aware of what you're doing. You're undermining artistry. As an artist yourself, that should be better. Anyway, that started doing even more numbers. The Barbs came for me. Then, like, lots of creative people came to support me. And then I think she got like thousands of quote retweets of her own fans saying like, yeah, we agree with this guy. This is kind of whack. Then it turned into, I don't know, there was like articles where it got out of hand. Yeah, but yeah, the internet will forget about that in a week.
Yeah. But you know what? I will say this, man. Shout out to the Rocksteady Dells, bro. Like, they had your back like major.
Yeah.
And I saw so many people who were really defending what you said. And what you said, is true. It wasn't really just a shot, like you said, directed at her, but this whole AI thing is just kind of hurting the industry, man. The artist and what you guys do, man. So I totally get it, even from an actor standpoint. AI is even trying to take over with, matching their voices and things like that. And it's just putting humans out of a job. It's all that it's going to do. Speaking
Yeah.
of kind of which, 2023, last year brought about some of the biggest sales in gaming history that we've seen. It was a record year. Yet, on
Mhm.
the flip side of all of that, development teams also had the biggest amount of layoffs in history.
Oh
Um,
yeah, for
kind of
sure.
talk to us about, like, how does that happen? It seems like if sales are great, that wouldn't be a thing.
Yeah. It's really difficult to like concisely explain what happened, because you have to consider that dev cycles are exactly that. They're a cycle, right?
Sure.
There is a period of time whereby you have a small amount of the team like figuring out what the game will be. Then there's like a mid to interim part where it's like, okay, we know what we're making, we just need loads of bodies on the team now, and we need like loads of people on it to like make it what it is. And then there's the final stretch, which is like kind of a very chaotic, like, okay, right, we need to build the house before they turn up. Once the game launches, two things usually happen. One is you suddenly don't need all of those people once the game is out. Because like I said, when you go back to the beginning, like the beginning is a time of figuring out what you're doing next. You do not
Sure.
need 400 people to plan a game, and so often what happens is, if the game is successful, you need less people. If the game is not successful, you also need less people.
Wow.
And there was, I guess, a bit of a gold rush, I think, whereby more people were playing games than ever in 2020. The number of people playing video games was like, it went through the roof. That wasn't organic growth. That was because a coronavirus broke out from
Yes.
Wuhan, and
Yes.
everyone is at home.
Yes.
And so video games became a beneficiary of the situation. And so loads of people use this opportunity to hire like crazy, because they was just like, games are selling like crazy. We're gonna, like, we can now use this as projections. So you have your projections of like how many people are going to play our game. You're like, let's say 10 million people are going to play this game. When COVID happened, those projections didn't look the same anymore.
Sure.
The same game that you was making and that was in no way different now had a new projection. It was like, well, it's probably not going to have 10 million. It's probably going to have 18 million people playing it if we can do it right. So now you're hiring for a crazy projection that's inorganic.
Sure.
It's like going to the supermarket to shop for groceries when you're hungry. People are making some crazy choices. And so because of that, I think that exacerbated the whole, what we're seeing now, where we're having this crazy attrition because we're like, well, actually, it turns out we didn't all win the lottery on the same day. We have to be a bit more conservative. And so the games that are coming out, many great games, but they all had to win.
Sure.
And even the ones that won, their projections for what's going to happen next is maybe not as optimistic, because of the state of the economy. And if the economy hits a real if the economy takes a serious hit, then people don't stop buying games, they buy less games.
Right.
So you still have to think about what your competition is. And also the inflation rates were crazy because of COVID. The inflation rates meant everything costs more.
Right.
So it costs more to produce a game, costs more salary to keep people. And because everyone's worried about the economy, the people who fund or invest in video games, suddenly they don't want to invest that much anymore. Like, if you have lots of money, cool, but you're not trying to throw it away for no reason. So if the projections start to go down, you're like, hey, maybe we're only going to fund one game instead of 3 because we're worried about the economy. So yeah,
Wow.
I'd say that's like a really diplomatic way of saying what's going on. Some of my peers would be like, nah, it's just CEO greed. But like, I think there's a bit of both.
And you know what? That really paints a picture for us on the outside looking in, versus you, someone who's on the inside of the industry and has been doing this for a while. You definitely gave definition to that, not only for myself, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people that are watching, because last year was just kind of one of those odd years. Even at the Game Awards, there were individuals who were passing out little pamphlets about what was going on, and myself,
Yes.
my wife got one.
You saw that,
And
right?
yes, I saw that, man, and we were just kind of sitting there looking through the information, and I was just like, wow. And I said to myself, if I ever had a chance to get you on, I definitely wanted to kind of get a picture of what that looked like. Now, being involved with so many huge titles, having worked for Respawn and having worked for Rocksteady Games, a lot of times these games sometimes are in development for anywhere from 3 to 8 years, or whatever the case may be. But being involved with so many huge titles over time, has there ever been a time where projects overlapped? Like, were you ever developing 2 games at once? or how does something like that work?
Yeah, sure. It changes from studio to studio. So the most recent title that I shipped is The Last of Us Part 2 Remaster.
Yes.
Because I had joined Naughty Dog 2022. And so yeah, I'm gonna be very careful about what I say and make sure it's
Sure,
super
sure.
public stuff. But
Absolutely.
I'm on the credits for The Last of Us Part 2 Remaster, which came out, what was that, like last week? But I was working on that at the same time as the working title of the online Last of Us title. Because
Yes.
there was an opportunity to be like, okay, we need you on this for a little bit. Now we're gonna like have you overlook this stuff over here. And so that's very common. I'm not giving any secrets here. Everyone knows that that's often the case. There can be two projects at the same time, and you can have an individual moving between the projects. Sometimes that's what you want to do, because like I mentioned, there is like the beginning of a game is the part where there's not many people, and then you go and ramp up towards the end, up to the middle. It gets more and more people, more resources, and then just before it finishes, it starts to tail off. Like, for example, I haven't been at Rocksteady for maybe 2.5 years or 3 years. I can't remember. Feels like 2.5 years. Maybe it's more than that. I need to check on the calendar. But I had finished Deadshot and Hack, and the game hadn't come out for 2.5 or 3 years. So my character art job was done.
Got
Like,
it.
had I stayed, I would have been working more on the DLC content. So the idea is, if you have multiple games at the same time, what you really want to do often is have it so like you have a person on the low end helping to work towards figuring a game out, get it to the middle section where it's like really heavy, everyone's needed, and then as it starts to come down a little bit more towards the end, you can get them onto a new project.
Gotcha.
And so you have like this like ebb and flow. Two projects is usually where you hit that ebb and flow of like, oh, we don't need you so much no more. You can as much on here, we can get you over here.
Got it.
But you know that changes from. There are other times like when I was a lead on Halo Wars 2. At the same time, the studio was working on Halo Wars 2. We was also working on Total War Warhammer. But those two teams were completely isolated from each other.
Wow.
Like,
Okay.
I didn't touch Total War Warhammer at all. I was completely on Halo Wars 2. I'd say 99% of the team stayed on Halo Wars 2. And that was the original Alien Isolation team. And so there are times when you're completely separated and segregated. And that's okay too, because the idea is that the success of one project, you don't want to release your projects at the same time. You don't want them to compete.
Sure.
But the success of one project should hold the financial like scaffolding to compensate for the other team who's not making money for you right now.
Right.
We were like, oh, they're not releasing a game right now. They're working on one, but we've released this game over here, and that should hold everyone or prop everyone up. So yeah, sometimes you switch, and sometimes they're separated.
Got it. Got it. That makes perfect sense. Now, speaking of The Last of Us, of course, congratulations on the remaster dropping. I did play through the first Last of Us game and the second one. I haven't played through the remastered version yet, but just a brilliantly done game. I mean, Naughty Dog ranks among some of the best in the industry. So thank you for your work on that. Now, of course, it is public knowledge.
My 1% of contribution, man. Those all the geniuses were already there before I entered the building. Like, I just turned up and it was just gods everywhere. So
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, speaking of The Last of Us, and again, we won't go into detail because again, we have to be careful with this, but it's public knowledge that the Last of Us factions or live service game that was set is no longer a thing. Well, when that happened, me personally, I've always been a fan of live service games. Now, I understand that every game technically can't be a live service game simply because, and I wouldn't want it to, because live service games take an amount of commitment. You've got to commit to playing them. So, there's a grind. I come from the days of Final Fantasy 11 online in 2002, man, and I played that game for 17 years religiously. and pay the, fee every month to play the game. Well, anyway, I'm used to that type of grind. Well, Square Enix is one of those studios, when the trigger got pulled on Last of Us Online, whatever that was to be, there were a lot of people who I guess are against live service games who were
Sure.
saying, well, yeah, because Naughty Dog just needs to focus on single player story mode games, as if to say both cannot be done. But I would put that to shame by saying Square Enix is one of those companies who has arguably produced some of the best single player story mode games with Final Fantasy, and also done some of the most successful online MMORPGs to date. So I think that, a live service game and a single player story mode game can come from the same development team. Enter Rocksteady Studios. I think that if anybody can pull this off, arguably they have some of the best games with the Batman Arkham series. And now here comes Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which I think was the best game to make. It was risky. You guys took a risk. But I think this was really an incredible choice. Now, let me ask you this. Suicide Squad, how many people did it take to pull off a game of this magnitude? Like, live service, I heard you mention a team of 400 earlier. Is that kind of a realistic number?
I honestly don't remember like how many of us it was at peak.
Sure.
I want to say like a number like maybe 300 or something.
Wow.
But it's hard to say because there's this kind of fallacy that the people who making Suicide Squad weren't the people who made Arkham Knight, which is like just wild bullshit. I don't really know where it came from, but like people just like kind of got this idea that like, oh, that's not the same team. That's not really the situation at all. Like these people spend their entire lives getting really good at making video games, and they're making a slightly different genre. Like, but what happens is if you have a different expertise, you need other people to come in from the team who are extremely good at that thing. And so
Sure.
there were people who were brought on the team who just like, they won their circle of who's good at this thing. Like who's good at like gunplay and gun balancing, who's really good at traversal stuff, and they've shown so in other games and stuff. So it wasn't a case of like, it's a very cherry-picked team, put it this way. This is not like, oh, let's find some. The team that made Suicide Squad are not just like incredibly talented, but they're all from very different parts of the world. Like if you had a flag of everyone that made that worked on that project, it would look like the Olympics.
Wow.
Like, because they had to get people from like Europe, from South Asia, East Asia, a lot of North American people, like a lot of Nordic people. There were people like, I can remember there being people who, there was one guy, I'm not going to name him, but his first language was Korean, and he was learning English on the job. Like,
Wow.
but when I tell you this guy's animations were just ridiculous, like so good. So yeah, so the team did balloon up because there was probably, I don't know, maybe 100 people less that worked on the Arkham games because it was a much smaller games. Remember, you're not making, like, people think, oh, you're making a game with some heroes. It's like, no, we have to make a game now with 4 Batmans, and each character has to be different. And again, it's even more than that, like, because you have to think about DLC. So yeah, I'd want to say somewhere in the like mid 300s works on the team. I mean, obviously you get contract and outsource help to like
Sure.
get people to help on specific things. I have no idea of what that number is, but yeah, I'd say somewhere around that. If that answers your question.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that is a massive team even still. And then the fact that, you spoke to the diversity, of people being from, different nations and, different race, color, and creed, and that's one of the things that I like so much about Insomniac as a development team, because they're very diverse. And so I think it takes that to really nail the culture of these
Yeah.
characters. And speaking of culture, I just got to say, man, Deadshot and Green Lantern and Hack are some of the best looking black characters in the business, bro. Like the fades of the hair, man. They represent our culture so well. Now, you actually opted to model Deadshot as a character, correct?
Yeah, correct. So originally, let me be careful about how much I say now, but still keep it interesting. Yeah, so originally, it was gonna be modeled by my then boss at the time, like the character art and weapons director. And he's been there, I think, since the end of Arkham Asylum. Like, so OG, like he's seen the whole process, right? But I requested Deadshot after I saw the first concept, and I was just like, oh yeah, no, that's looking good. That isn't even the concept that ended up being Deadshot. The Deadshot that you see is not the first concept, but it's the best, like the best concept. He basically, I think I made him maybe bottom to top like 3 times. But we made him, he was like, yeah, that's cool. He was like, but maybe we could do better. Like, because it was always a constant thing about like, we have to keep pushing because we don't want this to not feel like we're really rewarding the fans here with like an evolution.
Sure.
Like you could very easily just open up a comic book and just be like, yep, that's the character, and then put them in. But we were trying to be like, no, like this is a very capable audience to understand evolution. Like we don't have to treat them like children. But yeah, I ended up opting to do Deadshot, and for me that was a big deal because it was the first black character with a name that I got to work on after about 10. Well, that was at the time I was working on it. I'd been in the game industry for 10 years. And the other character as well, I didn't get to work on Green Lantern, but I get to oversee aspects of it because I started to slip into an outsource manager role where there was so much characters coming in that I was just like, I can quality control this and give lots of feedback and also do little bits and pieces on lots of characters. And I volunteered that, like, and part and parcel of that, I was like, if a character has black hair, like I really needed to go through me.
Right. Right.
And my art director was like, no problem. Like really supportive, super, super supportive. I can't express how supportive people are at Rocksteady. It's not a normal level of like supportive to the developers where I was like, we need to get this part right. So even situations like, the hair being worked on, it's not just a case of like, oh, it's just this, like, we're going to do that. I was like, I had an opportunity to explain like black culture and hair in black culture and like how it is linked to aspirations. Like we actually see someone as aspirational if they have fresh haircut in the black community.
Yes.
Like it's not just it's not a mild thing. It actually takes up a lot of how we perceive each other. And also I got to push for Hack too, who is most of the time you see her as a digital form. Because I got to make that character along with a VFX artist, Yasser Hussein. Both of us, basically, I was modeling the visuals. But imagine it if you hit pause. That's what it looked like. He came in and made everything like flicker and move and shudder, and because she's walking projections.
Sure.
But one of the things I was really like pushed a lot for was that I wanted to remove some aspects that made her ethnicity ambiguous and like be like, no, I think you should be able to really still see her ethnicity through. And so I played that up a little bit in like the way I textured the face and also making sure that you can see the texture of her hair.
Absolutely.
Because part of what is aspirational about these characters shouldn't be covered by what we don't associate with aspiration. It should be like, this person's cool and they're unapologetically who they are racially too.
Right.
Like, and you can think of that as like many different, like a really good example being, you could take a character who is I'm thinking of like Simu Liu from that Marvel movie. What's it called? The Marvel movie with
Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi, for
Uh-huh.
example. For example, had you taken the poster of that character and hid his hair texture and give him sunglasses, you could kind of remove what makes him unapologetically his ethnicity. It could still look cool, but the idea is that you often want to put to the forefront the aspects of the ethnicity or demographic, and but not do it like in a I don't know, a forced way. Just be
Sure.
like, this person is not trying to hide who they are. And I tried to make sure there were some elements of that in Deadshot and Hack. And even Green Lantern's fade, I was the one who gave the feedback for that. So even though
Hey
I didn't get
man,
to work about
the fade is fresh, bro.
it.
Like, I mean, dude, Green Lantern's fade is immaculate. And I've got
Yeah.
this screensaver on one of my monitors, which were the screensavers that they dropped in the Discord for Rocksteady, and it's got Green Lantern, front and center. So I'm rocking him, man. And just the fact that we get John Stewart in something is just, amazing in its own right. But what I like
Oh
about
yeah.
Hack as well is she's got this whole cyberpunk swag going on as well.
Yes.
Even with the colors, how she talks, and it's just, I'm telling you, these characters are done exceptionally well. I see some people asking, did you have anything to do with the Deadshot Batman skin?
I didn't make it, but I was in charge of getting it to where you see it now. Like, so I had to oversee the artist that was working on it and
Sure.
basically be like constant paint overs, like, no, more blood here, less blood here, bring the shoulders out, bring the chest in. So I oversaw the look of that model. Yes.
Well, let me
Um
tell you, you nailed it, man. Me personally, I'm a Deadshot main. Matter of fact, if you're a Deadshot main, just put Deadshot in the chat right now. Bumper Robinson, the voice actor for Deadshot, I mean, everything is just done really, really well. Even when I played the alpha that I got invited to, because the NDA is lifted for that, so we can talk about our experience with
mhm.
that. I played with Deadshot probably 75% of the time, and that's definitely going to be my mains. Let me ask you one more question, and then I'll get into another question and we'll
Sure.
wrap up, because again, I want to respect your time tonight.
We can keep going. It's fine.
Okay, cool deal. What do you feel? And again, without giving details, if you can touch this subject, what do you
Mhm.
feel is going to be the toughest boss fight out of the Justice League for players on the game? I mean, because I saw you share a meme about Batman one time, telling players that, like, we are not ready.
Yeah, I can't remember. Someone said like, "Yeah, I'm ready to fight Batman." I was like, "You're not ready. You're not ready. I've had practice and I'm not ready. I've actually played the game, and I think it's the wrong question to ask.
Okay. Okay.
Who is the most difficult? Yeah, who is the most difficult boss? I think, but because they all require a little bit something quite different of you each
Sure.
time. I think people should more consider like how much the game is going to ask of you
Okay.
to play fight each boss, because you have to think too, the Arkham games historically are boss battle games.
Right.
Like, this is like incredible story, but action games, but the bosses aren't like quick cook, get it out. It's like, no, how does this person think? How would they fight you based on their personality? how, like, historically, what do we know about this individual? But now we're at the point of like, these bosses are so bigger than anything that we've like. These are the most famous bosses in existence. You may never have
Absolutely.
heard of this game, but you know who these bosses are. You know at least two of who these bosses are. Your granddad knows who these bosses are. Like,
Right.
he's heard of them. So there's just so much like to draw from that. Yeah, I don't want to say who is like the most difficult, but don't underestimate how interesting the boss battle can get. These boss
Gotcha.
battles are like interesting. There are a lot of characters out there and a lot of bosses, and they have lore and background and blah. None of them have 100 years of reference that showed them in interesting ways to draw from. So yeah, these are going to be some of the most interesting boss battles, in my opinion.
Well, you know what? I would say, man, that you're on target because I guess obviously the Flash fight was so frustrating for IGN that they slammed it because he couldn't hit him.
You know, I'm going to be fair to the IGN reviewer. Is that one? From the gameplay I could see, that individual needed more time to learn how to play the game.
Sure.
By the time you usually get up to Flash, you know how to play the game. It's not the first 20 minutes of the game. It's not the first, like, you have time. So I think it's technically it's a good thing that person was frustrated.
Right.
It just worked out that wasn't good for a review.
Gotcha.
But had you played a game for an hour and got to a boss of that status and you not had trouble, I don't know if what that says about the game. If you got like another 25 hours to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Versus had you guys, like a lot of you guys, a lot of people viewing and yourself, you had an opportunity to play the game. And I don't know how many hours perhaps you put into the game, but I'm guessing it was like more than 5 or 6, like in the closed beta.
Yes.
That's closer to a time where you're like, I'm confident now. I move my character in a way where I know what's going to happen before I even press the button at such a good level where it doesn't mean you've completed the game or you understand the game in whole, because there's always more to progress the character. But you have a really good understanding so that by the time you hit the boss battle is going to look way better than had you got to that boss after 30 minutes of playing. So
wow.
In a weird way, it's just unfortunate it played out how it did. But had that reviewer played the closed beta for that, or is it the closed alpha for that weekend? Yes. For the, what was it, 2 or 3 days, and they like stayed in and they played it and they got familiar with the character and did the amount of time you need to get to that boss, I think we would have saw a different review.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. And I do like the fact that, each fight, from what I can tell, will play different, and each fight will require something different from us as the players. And I think that's totally, the way to do it. I mean, because this is the Justice League, for crying out loud. So these are, like you said, the biggest bosses that there could be, so it definitely shouldn't be a walk in the park and everything should feel different. So I'm just super, super excited to see what this game holds. Let me ask you this from a developer's standpoint, because again, a lot of people just say things and talk out the side of their neck, who don't make games, who's never made games, who don't even know the process or understand anything about what you all do. What would you feel, or what would you say is the biggest misconception that gamers have about developers?
That's tough. Yeah, that's tough. I think once a studio has success, they stop seeing you as passionate people.
Got it.
Yeah. The moment a studio has had some success, they're just like, oh, they're just corpos. Like, they're not. Even with the sentiment that Suicide Squad got when it was announced that you would be able to buy cosmetic skins that don't affect the game in any way. It's like, well, what if we released the exact same game but with no skins?
Right.
Like, because you're saying we don't want like any form of monetization at all. It's like, okay, you get the same game, but everyone wears the same outfit the whole time. But it's the same game. It's exactly the same game. It's like, yeah, the reaction just feels like, because I'll put it this way. I'm not looking at it as, oh, this is a way to add more money. Like, personally, I'm like, oh, by doing this, you add more money, you get more revenue. Yeah.
Right.
I don't believe that is actually how developers think per se. It's actually, if we can show in the projection, there's a way to get a little bit more revenue in a way that doesn't harm the consumer who doesn't want to pay extra money, we get more money to make a better game. So if you took out the extra revenue part, the game would not be as amazing as it is. And so I think sometimes there's this misconception that it's just like, yeah, maximize profit, just blah. And it's like, no, we're actually like, that's an aspect to it. But also we get an opportunity to make a bigger, better game. We can talk about things like free DLC characters, like that have been voice acted by really talented people. Like, we want you to see that when there's a zoom up of this character's face, like this is looking like a cutscene. This is looking like a movie. Right. We can take time to like get the lighting, like, so yeah, it's weird because you could try and frame something as a developer to do more for the consumer, but if you're an established studio, it can almost hurt you. Yeah. This is my perception. Like, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, one thing that I gotta say, and I don't know if it's just the culture of WB, the culture of Rocksteady, but I will say that even with, the game Gotham Knights and now this, I've never met development teams like the teams that are under the WB umbrella when it comes to the interaction with the fan base. I mean, again, you all, I mean, I could name person after person, the developers who are chatting with us, as the gamers on a daily basis, responding, coming in our streams, coming in, our chats, whatever the case is, man. And, I've just never seen a team of people that are that interactive with the fan base. So again, man, is that something that they just try to teach? I mean, because you guys are on it, man. I mean, y'all don't miss too much of anything.
Yeah, I'd say it might actually be the opposite. I don't know how much Warner Brothers is comfortable with developers being so vocal as a whole. Like, because you have to think there are like so many steps and so many layers above us.
Sure.
But it's the studios themselves that are Rocksteady, for example, is not Warner Brothers. It's a subsidiary. So it's like Rocksteady's going to look after their people and be like, no, we'll support you. We think you should have a voice. We believe in our developers. Like, obviously there is some level of like marketing alignment that needs to happen. Like, you can't have people out here talking recklessly. And there are different levels of oversight that happen if you work under the banner. I do not work for Warner Brothers anymore, and I do not work for Rocksteady anymore. So I don't need to ask their permission to come and talk to you.
Right.
But had I been there, maybe that would have been the process, which is fine. That's how it works when you have an employer who is directly affecting your they're directly affecting the view of your product, right? You want to be like, well, hey, don't say anything crazy. They're gonna clip it, which is totally fair. But every interaction you see from a developer, from who's worked on these WB games, is 100% organic. And if anything, they're putting their neck out by saying, thank you for supporting our game. Or liking your comment where you're like, oh, I'm really looking forward to this. They're like, because how long do you spend in like elementary school? Like 5 years or so? Like 4 or 5 years?
Yes, 5 years.
So there are people who worked on this project for 6. They spent more time on this game for you than they did in elementary school.
Wow.
So for people to be like, oh, they don't care, like it's just another cash grab for them, or like, oh, this they don't know what they're doing. Like, no, these are extremely talented people. They're the world's greatest people at what they do. Like, they are phenomenally good at what they do. They spent their entire life learning to do the thing they do, and they probably could get hired in loads of other places, but they was like, no, I'm going to devote 5+ years of my life to make sure that this part of the game is solid and good. And the least I can do is show respect to the fans and be like, thanks for like just believing us and giving us a chance. Like it's a real big deal. It's a big deal for someone to devote themselves that much time to a product.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, yeah, every interaction is like, you're even seeing interaction from people who aren't on the project anymore, who don't have any. I don't get a check bonus if this game does well. If this game does amazing and this game does poorly, my bank balance stays the same. But you're going to see people keep talking about this who have worked on this because they loved working on it. They actually loved the process of working on it, and they're proud of it. And they're like, yeah, we think something's here, and we just want you to give it a fair shot, because I spent elementary school time just for the short amount of hours you're going to spend playing it.
Wow. Man, that puts it into perspective. I never thought about looking at it from that angle. So, to invest that kind of time, that speaks volumes for how much you guys actually do care as developers. So, I just really, really, really appreciate it, man. It's almost like someone, in the Army. I almost want to tell you, thank you for your service, because, man, y'all put in work, and this is what entertains us. I've been a gamer since I was probably 3 years old, from the 8-bit Nintendo days. Now, my final question I want to ask is this. What would you rank the greatest system of all time?
PlayStation 2.
PlayStation 2. Okay.
Yeah. This is going to turn into another podcast if I'm not very careful with my words. But the reason why the PlayStation 2, in my opinion, was the greatest system of all